everybody, and welcome to the show. Thank you so much for joining me. Today I thought we'd do something a little bit different. Certainly in the paranormal, we tend to focus on the dark and spooky and horrible stories, and they have their value in that, we're dealing with a lot of things we don't understand, and some of these things can be incredibly dangerous. But given the strain that I think most of us feel nowadays with so many uncertainties in our lives and the world around us, everything seems so heavy now. And I thought, maybe it'd be a nice change to focus on the positive stuff, or at least the lighter side of the paranormal. Hey everybody, and welcome to the Paranormal Portal. I'm your host, Brent Thomas. Thank you so much for joining us today. We've got an epic show ahead, but just remember, if any of you have experiences you'd like to share, I'd love to hear from you. You can either email me at paranormalportalradio@gmail.com or head over to paranormalportal.net. Scroll down and find the button that says Interview Me, and that'll allow you to look at a calendar of possible times and dates and find a date that works for you. Love to hear your stories, so definitely get in touch with me. So today we're going to focus on a few of those and talk about them. And I don't know, I love these stories because they definitely make you feel like, all right, there's some good things out there helping people, stepping in. And whether they be angels or some other spiritual guardian of some type, I don't know. But in any case, people have these experiences, and I think it's about time we start focusing on a few of those. So I hope you guys are ready. We're about to take a trip to the lighter side of the paranormal. So first up, we have a story from a person who lost both of her parents and had a really incredible experience to remind her that they were still there and keeping an eye on her. So I think this is a beautiful story, and it just kind of fills you up with warm feelings. So here we go. My parents had both passed away years ago. No matter how old you get, this always remains an incredibly painful loss. In fact, my mourning continues to this day. But in the end, all I can do is carry on and try to make my parents proud. Following my father's death, he was the last one to go, we had the task of cleaning out his home. In the process of cleaning out his home, I found a beautiful framed photo of my mom and dad. It was amazing to see them both so happy, and it was a real treasure to me. I placed the framed photo on my table in my bedroom so that I could see them every day. It has remained there for quite some time until something amazing happened. One day, I was making my bed when it dawned on me that it was in fact my parents' anniversary. A sad, lonely feeling washed over me as I sat there, just feeling alone. Suddenly, I heard what sounded like a music box playing. And it was playing a song I wasn't familiar with. I was puzzled. I do have a collection of music boxes, so I decided to go check them out and see which one it was. I checked each one to see which one had played this unfamiliar song. And upon checking the last of my collection, I realized that none of these could have played the song that I heard. After this, I guess I dismissed it and went back to tidying up the bedroom. As I'm in my bedroom, I swear, I heard my mother's voice, and she said something like, "You're not going to give up that easily, are you?" I was shocked and spun around, and my eyes fell upon the framed picture of them. I went to the photo, picked it up, and decided to turn it over. And on the back of this frame was a small wind-up. I was shocked, as I'd never noticed this before, but I wound the little key, and sure enough, it played the song. I soon learned that the name of this song is the anniversary song. I wept tears of joy knowing that my parents had come to visit me on their anniversary. I found this story absolutely beautiful because I think many of us, and most of us probably, have suffered some kind of loss like this, and it's hard to go forward in life with essentially a hole in you from the space that used to be occupied by the people you love, and it gets pretty heavy and it gets pretty hard. I've suffered a few such losses in my life, and it probably never goes away completely, but it's kind of reassuring to know that perhaps they're still there. Perhaps they're still watching over us. And I think that's a beautiful thought. And I think experiences like this are amazingly cathartic, and they remind us that we're never alone. I don't pretend to know how often our loved ones are watching over us, but I sure hope it's often. And I think some of these experiences are great reminders to the fact that although we can't see them and probably not experience them for the most part, they are there, and they do come through and can come through. And I guess not all signs and situations are quite as clear as this one. I mean, it would be great if everybody had experiences like this. It would certainly make the grieving process so much easier for those who remain. But at any rate, it's a beautiful story, and just made me feel good. So next up, I've got another story about apparently a ghost that saved someone's life. And while these aren't as common, they are fantastic examples that maybe they're not just there, but maybe sometimes they can step in and keep us safe. And I think that's incredible. So let's check this out. I moved in with a male friend in 2007 when I was just 23 years old. I had known him since I was in my teens. Now, his sister had recently died in a very tragic way, and this was incredibly hard for him as they were very close. In his apartment, he had constructed a shrine of sorts for her. It was set up in a large bookcase. It consisted of candles, photographs of her, some poems that she had written, and a flask of alcohol that she always used, along with a large glass cross. He created this tradition that we shared every morning to take a shot of tequila in front of the shrine in honor of his sister. After this, we would play her favorite song on the stereo. One day, he told me that as long as I was here in this home, his sister's spirit would protect me, even though I had never met her. I thought this was great, but I didn't really believe that would be possible. Later on, my friend was at work one evening, and I was home alone. My phone rang, and it was my abusive ex-boyfriend who was extraordinarily violent calling. He was trying desperately to reconcile and get back together. And he also knew the friend that I lived with and had been to his apartment before I lived there. Well, he said he was in town and wanted to get together. Well, frantically, I told him that I couldn't have anyone over when my friend was away at work. If he wanted to come over, he'd have to wait until my friend returned at 7 a.m. I regretted those words immediately because now he knew I was alone. Instantly, I went to lock the doors and was going to go to my roommate's bedroom to lock his windows. As I made my way to his room, the doorknob turned. The door opened, and there stood my ex, holding a knife. He'd managed to pull himself through one of my roommate's windows. Well, I ran to the living room where he caught me and pushed me down, and I landed on the couch that was next to his sister's shrine. He was suddenly on top of me and began to assault me. In absolute panic, my eyes fell on his sister's shrine. The bookcase that held the shrine began to shake violently. It was shaken so hard it seemed as if it were about to fall over or collapse. All of the candles that I had lit in the living room suddenly blew out. The glass cross from his sister's shrine then flew off the shelf and struck my ex solidly on his back. Shocked, he spun around and looked in the direction of the shrine, when suddenly the stereo came on, blasting at full volume. He quickly ran from the apartment and has disappeared from my life forever. I know she saved my life that night. Following all of this, I moved back in with my parents, and surprisingly, the cemetery just down the street is where my old roommate's sister is buried. I regularly visit her grave and thank her for saving me. These kind of stories are incredibly powerful and very encouraging to think that not only can spirits be present and watching over us, but they can step in from time to time and save people, make the difference between possibly life and death. And I think that's so incredibly powerful. And I don't know why only some experiences end like this. Like, what is unique about this situation versus someone else? And I don't know why the intercession of spirits or angels or whatever isn't more consistent, but thank God they happen at all. Those things really give us hope and give us faith and maybe inspire faith. I don't pretend to know how everybody thinks, but for me, it's just like, wow, was it the sister? I don't know. Perhaps. Maybe it was a guardian angel. Maybe, any other number of possibilities. But regardless, something supernatural or paranormal stepped in and saved that woman. So it's an incredibly beautiful story nonetheless. All right. The next story that we're going to get into has to do with a woman who was unfortunately in a bad position and due to her husband passing away and him being owed a bunch of overtime from his former boss. And as you'll see, she definitely had some help getting this resolved. All right. The story starts out, a widow was left to manage life on her own after her husband had passed away after a lengthy battle with an incurable disease. Her husband worked constantly while he was alive for the company he worked for, and he built a huge amount of overtime prior to his passing. Before his passing, his boss assured both he and his wife that the overtime would be paid to his widow upon his death, so that she could live without the financial burden for a while. Eventually, he did pass away, and his boss stopped by and only paid her $5,000 and told her that was all. And then he just left. Well, she didn't know exactly how much overtime she was owed, but she was certain that $5,000 was nowhere near enough. She knew he was taking advantage of her. Her husband had tracked the overtime on their computer in their home. However, there was a problem. The computer no longer worked. She wasn't able to dispute the overtime, and she fell into a deep sadness knowing this was unfair, but there was nothing she could do about it. Her despair deepened over a period of time, and one day she had a mental breakdown. While in the depths of her sadness, she suddenly had an unexplainable urge to check the computer. At the end of her rope, she had nothing to lose, and so she did. She reached for the power button in her last-ditch effort, and the computer whirred to life. She quickly printed out all of the records of her deceased husband's overtime, which included being signed by his former boss, and realized that she was absolutely right. His former boss owed her over $50,000. Well, after a period of back and forth, it became clear he wasn't going to honor this, so she retained an attorney and had to fight this in court. Well, she won, and this allowed her to get back on her feet financially. And she is sure to this day that it was her husband making sure that she was okay. Wow, that's great. Again, against all odds, this broken computer wears to life, and they're able to fight back against that dishonest boss. And, I don't know. I mean, again, is it paranormal? Well, it certainly doesn't seem normal. Now, apparently, that computer never, ever worked again following that event. And that's just amazing. When she needed it most, it came on, and she was able to get the records that she needed to be able to defend herself and get what she was owed. That's really nothing short of miraculous when you think about it. But awesome story. And it makes you feel good, right? I mean, everybody wants to see the good guys win. And in this case, she did. So that was amazing. I'm real happy for her, whoever she is. And that's a wonderful story. Talk about one of my own experiences where I know it might be a stretch and I can't really explain it. I guess you have to have kind of been there. But this is one of my own stories, and it's a true story. And the events that happened were, in my mind, pretty incredible. In the late 80s, I was working as a security guard, which kind of dates me, I guess, but anyway. I was doing security at a parking ramp in downtown Minneapolis. Not really downtown, but it was near downtown. And the area I was in was pretty dangerous. It was not a safe place to be. But I was young. I was just a kid and, 18 years old and just experiencing the world. Now, even though this was a dangerous area, the company that I worked for, this was a contract they had, they didn't offer us radios or any communication devices, but they gave us a nice shirt with a badge on it. So that was good so that we could be identified. And, of course, a jacket in the winter. And this story takes place during the winter as I'm guarding this parking ramp at a low-income housing development and just looking for making sure nobody's cars are broken in and everything is okay. No damage to property, that kind of thing. But during the winters in Minnesota, you may or may not be familiar with it, but it's incredibly cold. And this was no exception. This was a very cold winter. At least it felt so to me. I was notified by the company I worked for that there were issues with homeless people. And we're given a directive. If you ever encounter a homeless person in the lobby, so there's double doors, 2 sets of double doors to get into the building itself. Now, my responsibility was the garage, but I still checked the building lobby to make sure everything was okay as well. So to get into the building, you had to go, the open doors on the outside went into a heated middle room area, like an entryway, and then the locked double doors to go into the actual building. Well, they were finding homeless people, kind of shacking up in those lobby areas, just trying to keep warm. And it was a heartbreaking order to receive because, of course, being a compassionate person, and I'm not patting myself on the back, but I do try to be compassionate, it was disheartening to know that I would have to be the person to push these people back out into this unforgiving cold. And it really was tough, but I guess I just figured, well, I'll cross that bridge if I come to it, because I had never experienced anybody doing this. So I took heart in the fact that, well, maybe they won't show up when I'm here. Well, several nights went by, or weeks, or a week or so, and suddenly I was walking around doing my rounds, and sure enough, there's someone huddled in the lobby. And I'm like, oh, shoot, this is tough. Now, it was a really cold night. I don't remember what the temperature was, but I know it was near zero, if not a little below, with some wind. And here was this man, and I couldn't really see him at first, so I walked in and I said, how you doing? And he said, oh, just trying to keep warm. And as he looked up, he was this gentle-looking, old Santa Claus-looking man. I don't know how else to describe him. He had these sparkling eyes, but he had very little hair, and he had this big white beard, but he was dressed in just some pieces of clothing. The man didn't really have a jacket, and he was walking around in his socks. He didn't even have shoes. And I was like, oh my God, what do I do? This is such a position to be in, but I can't in good conscience kick this man back out into the cold. That's just inhuman. So I introduced myself and I said, hi. I said, what's your name? And he told me his name was, I believe it was Ed. It's been many years now, but I believe it was Ed. And I said, look, Ed, here's the thing. I said, it's really late. There's probably not going to be anybody coming around for several hours as far as people living here. So here's the thing. You can stay in here and stay warm. But if anybody comes, I have to act like I'm kicking you out. After they leave, you can go back in. But I can't make you go outside. I just can't do that. It's like, oh, thank you so much. Thank you so much. And so we played this cat and mouse game throughout the night where he was fine until someone came. And when I saw someone come to return home late at night, I would walk in ahead of them and go, oh, okay, you got to get out of here. And he would easily comply, and we'd walk outside and wait for a little bit. And then he would go back in and stay warm. Now, one of the people that came home was very compassionate as well and saw the state of Ed and the clothing that he was wearing, given the elements outside. And he actually went upstairs and got him a pair of shoes and a jacket and a hat, like a stocking cap. So that was amazingly kind and a wonderful event to help Ed out, because it was just, he was in no way dressed for that weather. And I have no idea how that man made it to there. I don't know where he came from, how long he'd been outside, but it was a tragic state to see someone in. And it was nice that someone else stepped up to help him. However, we made it through the first night, and when it came time in the morning at about 5 a.m., and my shift would be over at 6 a.m., Ed would said good day and wandered off into the distance, and I would go my way back to my waiting car in the parking ramp, and that went on for a couple weeks. Ed was there pretty much every night, most every night. He was there for the 2-week period, and it was an amazing experience having conversations with Ed, because he explained that he had been a navigator in the military, and in the night skies when they were clear, we would stand outside and he would tell me about the constellations, but he would also tell me stories about those constellations. The knowledge this man had was just incredible. And I don't know that it was above normal, but it was just in so many different topics we would talk about and just share ideas and laughs. And it was an incredible thing. I really enjoyed those 2 weeks that he was there. And this went on, and finally one day after about the 2-week period, Ed, at about 3 a.m., said, I just wanted you to know that I got to go now. I was like, oh, okay, well, I guess I'll see you tomorrow night. And Ed looked at me, and he kind of smirked, and then turned and started walking away. And there was a bit of a mist that night or that morning, and it was starting to get warmer. And it seemed like there was a low-hanging cloud or something like that, but there was kind of a foggy effect that night, even though it was still in the late winter, and I watched him walking down the street, the sidewalk, and he was probably maybe about a block and a half away, and I could still see up the street a couple of blocks. And it wasn't very far, and there wasn't really anywhere that he could have gone, but suddenly there was a loud snap to my left. I was looking to the right. There was a loud snapping sound or something to my left. So I quickly looked over and saw nothing and quickly looked back, and he was gone. And he just was gone. And I don't know how to explain that other than to say it was like he disappeared. I didn't see it happen, but suddenly he wasn't there. And in that brief head turn left and back to my right, there's no way he could have gone more than a step or two. And it still befuddles me to this day. What did I experience? What was going on there? What was this all about? I don't know how to explain it, but suddenly my jaw just opened as I was standing there alone in the little bit of grass or grassy area in front of this building. I guess it wasn't grass; it was on the sidewalk, but it was like this lawn area with some sidewalk in it. And I was standing there watching him walk away, and suddenly he wasn't there. And it continues to be one of the great mysteries of my life. And I don't know. I just wonder if in that moment, was I being tested? Was that a test for me? Because I think we may reach these points in our lives where we're tested, our beliefs are tested, our compassion is tested. And was that mine? And I sure hope I passed. But it's an incredible experience. I don't know how to explain that. I mean, he was very much there. He was very much real as a person. And as a personality, he was there. It wasn't, anything ethereal at all. It was just normal until suddenly it wasn't normal. And then I was just stunned. I was like, oh, wait a minute. What just happened? And I took a long time to try to come to terms with that. It's like, well, and I never did see him again. That was it. That was the last time I ever saw him. He never came back. In fact, I never saw another homeless person in this area. He was the only one, but he was there. And I interacted with him, as did a few other of the people in that dwelling. He made some friends of other compassionate souls as well through that 2-week period, but it was just incredible that he was there out of nowhere suddenly, and then he wasn't. And how that encounter happened right after I was given that directive. I was given the directive, if you find homeless people in here, you've got to kick them out. And just like that, in my, I don't know if I worked there about close to a year. In about that time, I'd never seen a homeless person in that area. And after I was given that direction, boom, there's a homeless person, and I have to make a choice. And it was really heart-wrenching to think about. And then when I was faced with it, I was like, I can't do that. I can't do that. And basically, I was making minimum wage anyway, and I'm like, are you serious? I'm not going to do that. I'm not gonna do that. And even if I made $1 million an hour, I still wouldn't have done it. It's just, it just seems so impossible for me to take this vulnerable person and say, get out, good luck, and I just wasn't capable of it. And maybe to some people that seems like a weakness, and I don't know. I'm the one that has to live with myself after the choices I make. And, in this case, I tried to make the best choice I could, and I think I made the right choice. I think that, caring for this man and helping him out in his obviously time of great need was important. And that was all fine and good, and I felt good in my decision, and I think we pulled off the ploy several times as people came back, and I was like, you got to get out of here, you can't be in here, got to move along. And we'd go outside and wait, and then eventually, after the coast was clear, he'd go back in and warm up, and and I would go about my duties. So it worked out pretty well. But wherever he is, whatever he is, I hope he's well, and I do feel enriched by the whole experience, because when you're challenged in life like that, and when you're given the opportunity to be kind or be right, I chose being kind, because I couldn't, even though it would have been right of me to do that according to quote unquote the rules, against my, the weight of my soul, there was no way that was worth it. There was no way that I was going to turn into a block of ice. So that's my experience. And, I don't know. Was it an angelic experience? Maybe, maybe not. Maybe I misinterpreted it completely somehow. I don't know how. And I've thought back on it many, many, many times through the years, just wondering, wow, was that a test? Was that really one of my tests? And like I said, I hope I passed, but it's a true story. So take it or leave it, come to your own conclusions. And, I don't know what to tell you, but it's what happened. Now, lastly, tonight on the show, I want to leave you with a listener email I received, and this one is from a longtime listener of our YouTube show, which, if you haven't checked that out, please do. We are on YouTube doing live streams Wednesday, Friday, and Saturday at 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, 10 p.m. Eastern Time, and they're very different shows from the podcast. They're more of a variety show, and we like to have a lot of fun and keep it light and fun. But if you want to check it out, head over to the link that's in the description for our YouTube channel and check out some of the streams. Maybe you'll like them. They're quite a bit different from the podcast, but at the same time, it's all paranormal, so there's what's not to love. But anyway, this is Grumpy Owl, and Grumpy Owl's been with the show on YouTube for quite a while now and has been a wonderful friend and listener. So she emailed me and said, first, I apologize for how long this is. This is why it takes me a while to email my stories, because it's a little embarrassing how much I have to say. I try my best to include only the necessary details without rambling on. If you find it worthy to share, then feel free to do so, and you're welcome to edit it down. Well, I wouldn't dream of that, Grumpy Owl. Whatever you write, I'll be happy to read. This took place in Strathmore, Alabama in the year of 2006. I think AB's Alabama. I hope so. It was summertime, and I think it was late in the month of June or July. My 3 children were visiting their grandparents about 2.5 hours away, so it was just myself and my now ex-husband at home. We lived in one of those duplexes, and our apartment faced the back alley. Across the alley was the back entrance of a small Sobeys grocery store. Their big garbage bin is right there, along with some gas or power meter thing. I don't know exactly what that was, but it was big. It was getting late, roughly 8 or 9 p.m., when we decided to head downstairs to bed. The sun was starting to set, and we hadn't bothered to turn any lights on yet. Our bedroom window faced the alley, and it was open to let the fresh air in. We're just laying down, talking about whatever, when this light, this pure white light, pulsed twice through our window. These pulses were slow, too, taking about 2 seconds to brighten and 2 seconds to dim, like someone was controlling the light with one of those dimmer switch type things. Only this light was more similar to those bright halogen lights that some people have on their vehicles. There was no sound, though, and this wasn't a passing vehicle. A vehicle with normal lights did pass not long after those pulses, though, and I've often wondered if they also saw it, prompting them to turn down that alley to begin with. Plus, the passing vehicle lights created moving shadows in our room, while that light did not, and we could not hear the car driving over the gravel. Both of us were obviously curious as to what it was. My ex got up and looked out the window and was quiet for a bit. I can tell he was obviously seeing something. He says he sees a guy out there, and I'm thinking, some guy's looking to break into cars or something. During this, that car I mentioned was passing, and I was getting up to go take a look out the window myself. Even though I'm explaining a lot, this all took place in a matter of 5 minutes, give or take. Whoever was there went behind the Sobeys garbage dumpster. My ex started to describe what this guy looked like. He said he was naked and kind of chuckled a bit when he said it, and he was walking on all fours. He tried to verbally explain what that looked like, and it wasn't making sense, so I got him to sketch it out. Sorry, but I threw it out after having it for maybe 10 years, lol. I did find an image that Tony made, Tony from the Confessionals podcast, which is a great show too, ladies and gentlemen. If you haven't checked it out, definitely check it out. And it was used as a video thumbnail that best matches what was seen. I'll try to explain, so hopefully this makes sense. Imagine a pale, naked man bending over to touch his palms on the ground, kind of making an upside-down V shape, and then his head stays facing forward with ease. For us to do that right now, the back of our heads would be touching our upper back. That's impossible for us to do without breaking our neck. Its neck looked weird, and its head was bulbous-shaped. And the way he described its movements was strange as well, and it sounds kind of apish, but not quite. It moved its limbs in tandem together. Back legs both went forward, and then the front legs or arms moved forward together. And it might have suspected it was seen or saw the car coming and quickly hid behind the big garbage bin. I never got to see it, but it's probably a good thing I didn't. The rest of the night was uneventful, but the next day it continues. I think this is why I'm glad I never saw it myself, and that my kids were far away, although it took me some years to make a connection. After seeing that strange light and the weird naked man in the alley, we shut the window and blinds and went back to bed to talk about it. I remember telling my ex that I've never heard of such a thing. Bigfoots, UFOs, ghosts, but not that. I thought to myself about how I was going to tell everybody at the bar I worked at. Laugh out loud. No kidding. And eventually we just ended up going to sleep. The very next day, our kids were coming home in the morning, and we wanted to make sure that we were all rested up, ready for our nice little break. I swear it was almost to the time that light and that thing was seen that we both at the same time fell extremely sick. I can't express how awful it was. I've never experienced anything that severe before or since. Imagine the stomach flu, but like 10 times worse. All night we were up, and I was able to time the space between throwing up, which was roughly 30 minutes, and it decreased through the night to be every 20 minutes. We tried to sleep. Usually a normal stomach flu wouldn't be this torturous. We'd get some sleep at least, but nope, not with this. It hit my ex much harder too. It was coming out of both ends. No, that's so horrible. Poor guy. Is it because he saw it? Or exposed himself earlier than I did to that open window? I never thought to make a connection to that sighting, not till at least a year ago, believe it or not. I thought it was the stomach flu the whole time, and I was worried about my kids going through this. They'll be here in the morning and catch the bug. That was all that went through my mind, and I remember praying for it to go away so I could just get some rest. I know this sounds a bit dramatic, but I can still feel those emotions. I have a tendency to be expressive this way, so that's just how I am. Well, morning came and my kids were finally home, and something interesting happened at this time as well. I believe someone heard my constant plea for help because I felt another presence enter the room. I didn't see them, but I felt them close by. In my mind, they spoke and said, "Everything will be okay now. You can now rest." Then the presence was gone. and I was able to finally sleep. My ex was better too. He didn't sense anything like I did, though, and didn't have much to say about it. He was a champ, though, and amazingly had all his energy back and took the kids out to get Slurpees right after. He told me to sleep and got me a Slurpee as well, which mostly melted as I was way too tired. I still worried about my kids getting sick. Stomach flus spread around way too easy. But I was relieved that it never happened to them, which leads me more to think that my ex and I might have had a blast of radiation poisoning from whatever that light was. And it affected my ex more because he was the one who stood in the open window the longest. But I don't know anything about radiation poisoning or what that light was to begin with. What connection does that light have with this thing in the alley? Well, I heard that these things come around because of the star people, almost hitching a ride unbeknownst to them to come here, if that makes sense. I don't know, but that's the closest I've ever come to some kind of explanation on what happened on those nights. And I don't know who that was that most likely healed us in the morning. They definitely felt benevolent. I've felt that from time to time, and the love is unbelievably strong. It always brought me to tears. I have a lot more experiences. Well, it sounds like a lot, but it's all spread out through nearly 41 years of my life now. I guess I'm an experiencer along with some of my other family members. The house I grew in that my parents still live in is haunted by something or someone who isn't too bad. They like to spook you sometimes, but mostly will just hide things and put them back after watching you look high and low for it, I guess. Oh, that's got to be irritating. And it's because of that place I won't sleep without a nightlight. I got an impression once that something was close to my face while I was trying to sleep, and it had a lot of sharp teeth, like the head of a T-Rex, but with bigger and more teeth than they're supposed to have. And it was floating right there, staring down at me. I'm not saying that's what it was for sure, but whatever it is in that house likes to appear in what scares you the most. I know I didn't actually see it, but I've already had these impressions before and had to look thinking it's just my imagination, and it turned out not to be. The T-Rex head isn't the only thing it appeared as. And I also learned quick to put all my toys away before bed because they moved at night. They moved impossibly, too. Some toys were solid and their heads and other parts would move to face me, and they didn't have any moving parts. Maybe my eyes were playing tricks, but that doesn't explain everything else. All right, this email's already way too hellishly long, and that's why it takes me a while to email. I know I have a lot to say, and I also don't want to miss any details, but if there are any questions, feel free to ask. That's wonderful. You did a great job. Thank you so much, Grumpy Owl. That's a wonderful email. And the closing, she said, "These things are real. I believe my ex in what he saw. It was even more confirmed for me after hearing other people's stories when they explained how it looks. Those details get me every time." Yeah, that's for sure. That's an amazing story. It's a pale crawler story, basically, but it turned into so much more because it has an happy ending. So it worked out well for this show. Something intervened. And I guess that's the theme of the night, is that these beings, whatever they are, if they're angels, just benevolent spirits, or loved one spirits, ancestors, or whatever, can sometimes reach through the veil and help. And that's amazing to me. I really wish, and maybe it is a very common occurrence. It's hard to know the nature of these things completely because we just don't know. We can only go by either our own experiences or the experience of others. But in any case, these accounts and encounters are pretty incredible. Now, as far as Grumpy Owl, it does sound like there was something to do with that light. Perhaps the light was a UFO. Perhaps it was something else, something extra-dimensional, a portal. It's anybody's guess. I don't know if light is actually common with portals, light like that anyway. I know a lot of people claim to see portals and have claimed to see portals. I've not witnessed it, so I don't know exactly what that looks like, but could it have been this thing coming from somewhere else? I don't know. It's a lot to grab onto. I realize that, but in any case, it's a bunch of incredible stories, and I hope you guys enjoyed the show. So until next time, be good. Get out! Guys, thank you so much for joining us here on tonight's show. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Please feel free to follow us on Facebook, facebook.com/Paranormal Portal Radio, as well as finding us on Twitter. We're on Twitter at Paranormal Portal, Portl, and we'd love to have you stop by our YouTube page and subscribe and check out our shows there. We got hundreds of shows, Journeys into the Paranormal Portal, so I hope you'll check it out, guys. We're over there at youtube.com/Paranormal Portal, so hope to see you guys soon. We'll be back, of course, for more podcasts in the coming days. So we love you all. Be good, be kind, be nice. Take care of each other. Help each other out. Find the magic in every day. And remember to laugh as much as you can.